And here we are at episode 7, whereby I pull those frames apart and cut the louver mortises in all of the styles. Drill the holes for draw pegging the parts together and kind of get down to the finishing line with these. A couple other things I've got to do. Because they're going to be open and affixed to the house and not going to close ever again, they still need that bar for moving louvers, which these don't have. It's going to be fake. It's just going to be sat on there to look like it's the bar that moves the louvers up and down. And that's just for show. Because Sarah didn't want these to be open and closed anymore. Modern house, modern windows. So they're just going to be open, affixed, and decorative. That's fine with the historical district, apparently. So let's get on to pulling these apart. I'll show you how I pull them apart with the tight mortises, and we'll set up for the louvers. The easiest way to pull these apart, since some of these mortise and tenon joints are pretty tight, the Irwin quick clamps, and I think all the rest of them do this as well, this jaw was over here when it was closing up. When you take the jaw off here and you put it on this end, it just unscrews and screws in place. Now you've got a separating jaw. It basically moves apart. And you basically put it in here, clamp down on it, and it'll move the parts apart. Now, the styles are all marked where the louvers have to go. They are marked lefts and rights, so hopefully it won't make that mistake. They are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're also marked for where each of the rails goes into the styles, so they go back where they came from. When you're dealing with wood, you got to do things like that so they all fit the way they're supposed to fit and the way they fit when you originally put them together. Let me get this down to 1 and we'll start pulling them apart. Turns out I need to do a little banging after all. Okay, whoops. Falling all over the place. So there they are, pulled apart with a left and a right. And these have to go in the right direction. So this is the bottom with the large mortise where the large rail goes. That's the bottom, so all the louvers have to point down this way. So I'll put a mark in there on there as well for that. So here are the styles for number 4. These are the marks that tell me what direction I want the louvers to go in, as you can see them in the camera. There you go. These are going to be painted, primed and painted, so I'm marking in Sharpie so I can always find it. As I alluded to and showed in a previous episode, I made these jigs for my plunge router and a guide bushing. Basically, you lay it on the workpiece, you come down, see the line I drew, come up just above that line, clamp it in place and cut all these. Then index it to the next one, index to the next one, and so on up the piece. And then start the same process between this style and that rail and that rail. How I made these was on the CNC machine. I don't know if I went into detail in the previous episode, but I drew these up in AutoCAD and then imported them into VCarve, which is the driving software for our CNC, and then cut them out. And then ripped them in half. I cut them out in one piece, and then I ripped it in half and then indexed it so it fits on the workpiece correctly. And the reason I did that and didn't go to some of the manufacturers that make jigs for this particular process is the angle of these louvers are not like any angle any modern louvers I can find. They're all those louvers are not as steep as these, they're more, cranked a little bit more this way. So they're, I forget what these are. I think these are like 14 degrees, and those are more like 20 degrees and 25 degrees. So I had to make my own, and I made it specifically for the guide bush and a 1/4 inch router bit, because the louvers, let me grab one. The louver is a 1/4 inch, and I'll take one of these, trim it off, tape it up so I can use it as an indexing piece to move this up and down the stiles. So let's get started and make some sawdust. As I described earlier, this is how it's going to be done. I'm clamped to the workpiece. I had the longer wings for the jig fence so that the clamps can lay down and be out of the way of the router. And to index each piece along as I cut it, I move the jig up, and then I take this piece here I have with the tape and index it by sliding it in here and into the slot that's already existing on the workpiece. That way I'm sure I'm getting it spaced evenly all the way up the workpiece. So let's get started. I'll cut these out and then go on with the rest of them. Quick note on the plunge router. It's standard old DeWalt plunge router. I have set the depth for the cutter to go as deep as I need. I'm using a downcut bit. Maybe I should be using an upcut bit. I'm using a downcut bit, but it's set to the depth to get the cut that I need in the workpiece. So let's make some noise. So there's the first series of cuts. I will now go on to do the rest of it. I'm using, I think I mentioned I'm using a downcut bit. I really think I might have to switch to an upcut bit to get everything exactly where I want it. But anyway, there we are. I will move on now to do the rest of it. Now I want to do the draw peg holes. Many of you know what draw pegging means. For those who don't, you're going to drill all your mortises out for the pegs. Assemble the workpiece like I have here, clamp it together tight. Mark where the center of this hole is, and then when you drill a hole through the tenon, you're going to move it inboard towards the shoulder of the rail, 1/32 of an inch or so. Then drill the hole there. That way the hole's now offset, so when you drive the peg through, it pulls the workpieces together. And I'm going to use the same brad point bit that I drilled the holes with and my trusty Warrington hammer. Bring the camera down and show you exactly what I mean. Holes drilled all the way through. The workpieces clamped together, bringing these up tight. I've got to do a little shoulder work to make that a little cleaner. So what I'm going to do is take the same brad point bit and just tap it into the hole that I drilled previously. Hit bottom, give it a tap, pull the bit out, which is tough because it's tight, and right there I have now a point mark dead center where that hole is. Do the same thing over here on this one, and pull it out. And again, now when I take this apart, I will mark these inboard this way, which will make the workpieces draw tighter together when you put the pegs in. So here's the wing cutter indentations from the drill bit. There's the center point from the drill bit. Now, what I want to do is take the awl, move this in about there, 1/32 of an inch or so, give it a tap. That's where I'm going to drill a hole. You'll see it's now set, the hole set a little bit this way, so there'll be a shoulder here. When the peg goes through there, it'll draw the workpieces very tight, and they'll never come apart. Well, there's episode 7. The next episode, I hope to have all these fit together as units together. Everything's in place and they're able to be mounted to the house. The few minor things I have to do is some decorative trim work on either side of these and put in the fake, get that fake imitation, louver mover rod that goes on the louvers that move, but don't move on this one, because when the shutter is against the house, that side of the shutter will be exposed. So those will have to be on there. And that's simple. They're going to be glued and screwed. So until episode 8, make great things out of wood.